The sun was already low over the hills of Zebulun when the word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Not a whisper, not a dream, a word that landed like a stone in still water, certain, spreading, impossible to ignore. Jonah was a prophet of Israel, a man who had spoken God's truth before kings, a man who knew the sound of divine calling the way a shepherd knows the bleat of his own flock. He lived in a world of olive groves and limestone roads, of temple incense and market noise, of a people who believed, however imperfectly, in the God who had made the heavens and the sea. His was a familiar world, a comfortable one, and then God asked him to leave it. The city of Nineveh shimmered somewhere to the northeast, 3 days' journey across from edge to edge, an enormous city, Scripture would call it, a great city, full of more than 120,000 people who did not know their right hand from their left. Nineveh was Assyria's crown jewel, violent, pagan, proud. To any Israelite, it was not just a foreign city. It was a symbol of everything cruel and godless in the world. And God was sending Jonah there, to preach against it, to give warning, to offer mercy to the very people Israel had most reason to fear. The tension at the heart of this story is ancient and deeply human. What do you do when God asks you to love your enemy? Jonah ran. He didn't argue with God, didn't negotiate, didn't ask for time. He simply turned his face west, the opposite direction entirely, and walked toward the port city of Joppa, where the salt air hits you before you even see the water. He found a ship. He paid his fare. He went down into the hold. The text says it plainly. He was fleeing from the presence of the Lord. As if the deep enough ocean could put distance between a man and the God who made the ocean. The sea was calm when they left the harbor. It wouldn't stay that way. The storm came on fast, the kind of storm sailors remember for the rest of their lives, the kind that makes experienced men pray to any God whose name they know. Waves like dark hills rose and crashed across the deck. The wind screamed through the rigging. The mariners were terrified, seasoned, hardened men who had seen hard weather, and they cried out to their gods, every one of them, in languages Jonah didn't speak. They threw cargo overboard to lighten the ship, crates and jars and bolts of cloth spinning down into the black water. Nothing helped. The ship groaned like a living thing in pain. And where was Jonah? Down in the hold, asleep. There is something almost impossible about that detail. A man so exhausted by running from God that he could sleep through a ship tearing itself apart. The captain found him and shook him awake. How can you sleep? Get up and call on your God. Maybe your God will give us a thought so that we will not perish. Above deck, the sailors cast lots to find who had brought this calamity upon them, and the lot fell on Jonah. They turned to face him with the rain lashing their faces and lightning splitting the sky. Tell us, they demanded, what is your occupation? Where do you come from? What is your country? Of what people are you? And Jonah told them the truth. I am a Hebrew, he said, and I fear the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the dry land. The sailors were terrified even more. They had suspected a spiritual cause. Now they had a name. The God who made the sea itself was angry. What is this that you have done? They asked. And Jonah, to his credit, told them what to do. Pick me up and hurl me into the sea, he said. Then the sea will quiet down for you. For I know it is because of me that this great tempest has come upon you. These are the words of a man who knows he is caught, not hiding from God anymore, but not fully surrendered either. He is simply telling the truth about the cost of his disobedience and offering himself to pay it. The sailors didn't want to do it. They rowed harder. The storm roared harder. Finally, they prayed to the God of Israel, the God Jonah had tried to flee, and they threw him in. The sea immediately went still. The water closed over Jonah's head like a cold, black curtain. The ship's hull disappeared above him, and the last light faded, and the roar of the storm became silence. He sank. He sank into a darkness that had no bottom and no edge, into the deep places where the pressure builds and the cold settles into your bones, and there is nothing left to hold on to. Scripture says he was there 3 days and 3 nights. 3 days in the belly of the great fish that God appointed to swallow him. 3 days in the dark, breathing air that tasted of salt and something ancient, hearing nothing but the slow pulse of water around him. And in that darkness, Jonah prayed. Not a polished prayer. Not the prayer of a man confident in his standing with God. This was the prayer of a man who had hit the bottom, literally, and discovered that even there, God was present. Out of the belly of Sheol I cried, he prayed, and you heard my voice. He described the water closing over his soul, the weeds wrapped around his head, the earth with its bars closing upon him forever. And then one line that shifts everything. But you brought up my life from the pit, O Lord my God. Past tense. He spoke it like it had already happened, as if the act of turning back to God was itself the rescue, before the fish had even opened its mouth. Those who pay regard to vain idols forsake their hope of steadfast love. Jonah prayed, but I with the voice of thanksgiving will sacrifice to you. What I have vowed I will pay. Salvation belongs to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to the fish, and the fish vomited Jonah out onto dry land. Imagine the moment. The blinding white of sunlight, sand under his hands, real and warm. The sound of waves, no longer threatening, just waves. The smell of open air. Jonah, soaking and gasping and alive on a beach somewhere, alone with the sky and the God he had tried to outrun. And the word of the Lord came to him a second time. Same message, same city, same call. This time, Jonah went. What does a story like this want us to hold on to? Not a rule. Not a tidy lesson about obedience, though that's in there. Something bigger, quieter, harder to name. This is a story about the limits of running. Every human life has a japa, a moment where we turn away from the harder thing and book passage on a ship headed somewhere easier. We understand Jonah. His fear makes sense. His resistance makes sense. Nineveh was real. The danger was real. The disgust was real. God was asking something enormous, and Jonah said no with his feet. But the ocean didn't end the story. The darkness didn't end the story. Even in the belly of the fish, that most desperate, most humiliating, most completely lost place, God was still there, still listening, still able to bring a man back to the shore. That is what this story ultimately reveals. Not a God who punishes the runaway, but a God who pursues. A God whose mercy is larger than our prejudice, whose patience outlasts our fear, whose purposes move forward even when we have spent our last coin on a ticket heading the wrong way. Jonah's story is not finished with the fish. There is more. A city that repented, a prophet who sulked, a God who asked a question so tender it has echoed across 3,000 years. But that is a story for another night. For now, there is just a man on a beach, sand warm beneath him, alive when he had no right to be, and the voice that had called him from the beginning, calling him still.